So I want to talk about one of the biggest misconception there is about twin flames, the yin and the yang, right? Which generally represents duality and polarity. However, as you evolve, as you ascend as a being, okay, the more spiritual experiences you have, the more knowledge you have, the more esoteric information you're privy to, right? So there's a big misconception on twin flames energy, and I can't dive into it because it's kind of like an assignment, and it's your job, the collective, to figure out what the answer to those questions are. And the biggest misconception about twins is the conception of duality and polarity. And I'm going to leave it at that. However, if you notice the diminishing of one twin, you'll notice the diminishing of another twin, but on a grander scale. For whatever reason, the feminines were awakened first. However, the masculines always financially outdo the feminine. You always find the masculine in high places. You always find the feminine in high places, but in a spiritual sense, not in a financial sense. It would take the feminine would have to work extra hard, twice as hard as the masculine, to get where the masculine's at. The feminines are usually isolated, so they usually stay by themselves. Usually you find a feminine who is really a divine being, which there's only 4 sets on the planet, okay? You'll find every divine feminine, all 4 DFs, none of them are financially strapped, not one. All of them are tarot readers. All of them are very deep into divinity, into the esoteric, into the occult, right? Because that's their strength. They have to stay there in that type of energy to help keep the masculine afloat and keep their feminine energy afloat. So they have to juggle both energies, right? The masculines, they're in the world and they're of the world. The feminines are in the world, but they're not of the world. And so the masculines are always easily distracted energetically by things, material resources, women, just things that would temptation, to just generalize it. The feminines are never tempted per se. It's very rare you'd find the feminine being distracted. The masculines will like rocks that sparkle, and the feminine will collect rocks on the ground that has dust and grime on it, and to her, that's valuable. To the masculine, the opposite is true. So the biggest misconception, because of those things, the biggest misconception is the difference between the masculine and the feminine. And as soon as, if you're super duper of high vibration, like you're a shaman, you will know that there's not much of a difference between the masculine and the feminine energy. And these are some of the lessons that the masculine and the collective are going to learn as they go along. But it's not something for the feminine that already has knowledge of this to disclose to the masculine or to the collective. It's their assignment sheet. It's for them to figure out. And these are usually used, these concepts, these beliefs, and all these memes and myths and stuff like that are used to keep the masculine and the feminine energy separated. It's up to the masculine to figure out his feminine, to get familiar with his feminine energy, his feminine side of him. Not just the physical side, but the spiritual side of him. It's up to the feminine to get accustomed to the masculine side of her, and not just the physical side, but the spiritual side of her. If both masculine and feminine tap into each other's brain, which they can, nobody on this earth can tap into the masculine more than the feminine. Nobody on the feminine can tap into the masculine. Nobody, and vice versa, because I forgot what I said. So one of the things that the masculine need to figure out, which the feminine is always tempted to tell him, which she shouldn't, is that they're not necessarily opposites. It was set in place to protect the feminine's energy. Every single time Father sends a prophet, the collective, humans, slaughter the prophet. They imprison the prophet. They stone the prophet. They put the prophet on a cross. They shoot the prophet, they beat the prophet, they slander, they do all manner of evil to the prophets. Okay, there are several prophets that walk this earth, Buddha, Nelson Mandela, many more. Abraham Lincoln was a prophet, he was fully awakened. George Washington was a prophet. Mother Teresa was a prophet. Emily Rose is a prophetess. Mother Teresa is a prophetess. This woman on YouTube called Lala, fun fact, actually true, is a prophetess. She does Power of Love Tarot. But she got caught up lately, but that's a long story. She's actually amazing. Her energy got caught up lately, spiritually, the spiritual realms I saw. But she's a real twin. There are several people that are around that are real prophet and prophetess. Anyway, the feminine is in protective gear, right? The feminine will have a lot of changes, will experience a lot of shifts, like shape-shifting energies, because it's done to protect the feminine so that the feminine doesn't get assassinated more than she needs to, okay? The masculine needs to figure out how similar is he really to the feminine. The feminine tries to drop clues to the masculine, like, I'm this way or I'm that way, riddle me this, riddle me that. As soon as the masculine realizes what the obstacles are that are set in place for his feminine, all four masculines on the planet, what the obstacles are set in place, why are the changes? It could be change of address, change of names, change of jobs, relationships, friendships, whatever. There's constant change in the feminine's life from birth all the way up to the now moment, right? These are set in place to prevent obstacles and barriers from hurting the feminine. When the feminine and the masculine energy comes together, they become one. So the yin and the yang symbol closes, right? The gap closes. It is a closable gap, okay? These are just little tidbits that the masculine need to realize, the collective need to realize, and the feminine energy needs to realize that even though there's duality and there's polarity, there's really no such thing, because we're all multifaceted beings, okay? We all have different aspects to our beings. We don't just have black or white, or, there's areas of gray in there. There's a little bit of everything in there. That's what makes up our dynamic. That's why we have a ton of cells, So, that's something that I wanted to share. I wanted to share the moral of the story is, what is the feminine really? That's the big question. What is the feminine? And is the feminine the feminine? And is the masculine the masculine? Who plays what role and why? Okay, but I can give you one of the answers. The reason why the roles are switched up and why the roles are so diverse is for protection. It's a protective element set in place mainly to protect the perceived feminine energy, the dominant feminine energy, okay? As the masculine pays attention to his likes, his dislikes, he will start to figure out what he is. As the feminine pays attention to her likes and dislikes, she'll start to figure out what she is and isn't, okay? And then they'll both come together and find some mutual perspective. The masculine and the feminine energy has a lot of theories out there. Some say the feminine and the masculine energy is put out there so they can both learn about themselves, and that it's a ratchet journey. I agree, it's ratchet. However, that's false, okay? That's just another misconception that's put out there, another myth, and it's for them to figure it out. When the masculine and the feminine energy look to other people, to outside external forces for answers, that's when they get thrown off their path. That's when they get deceived. That's where depression sets in. That's where the human experience of anxiety sets in. All these things, okay? So it's their homework. It's not the collective's homework. It's not their friends, their relatives, which is part of the collective. No, it's their homework to figure out what they really are, where they really fit in, how they really fit in, how much different are they really, if at all, okay? Are they really two separate entities, or are they one entities operating as two? And why are they operating as two? What's up with the illusion? What's up with the chaos and the confusion? Okay, what is it for? Why is this element of protection here? Why is this element of illusion here? You know, so that's something that they need to know. And that's what's going to make them stronger. For those that have done their homework and realize that the masculine and the feminine energy brain operates as one, then those are the ones that the entities that will try to fight against that. Okay, and try to stop that. But there really is no separation between the twins, only physical separation. And that's a deep statement, because it's true. They can only be physically separated. They can never be spiritually separated. They can never be mentally, emotionally, psychologically separated. And no matter how much they try to separate themselves from the other, it just means that someone is not awakened to self. Someone is not aware of self. Because if you were, you wouldn't fight against the energy. So they operate as one, even though they're dual energy, a diverse energy, so to speak. But to the collective, they're a dual energy, but they're not. The masculine is the feminine strength. If the masculine is anxious, the feminine is anxious. What are you, let's say you're watching a feminine twin and you're watching a masculine twin. The feminine or the masculine twin are both expert at masking their true identity, their true feelings, whether they do it consciously or subconsciously. Okay, but they're expert at wearing a mask, which is every human being wears a mask. Every human being has a public and a private self. Okay, they're no exception. There's nothing weird going on here. They're not dangerous or extra special or nothing. That's just how mankind is. Okay. The masculine, if the masculine is depressed, the feminine is depressed, whether you see it or not. If the masculine is anxious, the feminine gets anxious. If the masculine gets physically hurt, the feminine gets physically hurt. If the masculine suffers from a financial fall, the feminine suffers from a financial fall. Vice versa, same way. Okay, whatever happens to them, if the feminine divorced and got out of a relationship, the masculine will start having problems in his relationship. If the masculine, they operate off the same exact wavelength. Okay, the only thing that's different between them is their physical address, their location, their physical location. Everything else is the same. If the feminine is horny, the masculine is horny. If the feminine is angry, something will upset the masculine. The feminine is laughing a lot, the masculine will start laughing. They really, really operate on the same wavelength. Okay, and that's the big test sheet that they need to figure out. How different are we really? What's the difference between us? What differentiates us and what defines us? And that's their homework. It's important, it's very imperative that the masculine doesn't. The feminine knows this typically, because the feminine stays grounded more so than the masculine, because the feminine has less external distractions. So the feminine is forced to go within at all times. Okay? So you'll find the feminine vibrating on a much higher frequency. That's why all of us, all four of us, are tarot readers. All of us are psychics, seers, revelators. We foresee things. We don't have anything else to rock on. Outside of paying our bills and engaging in writing, we're all four masculines on the planet are writers. Okay, all four feminines on the planet are writers. You'll find them writing books. You'll find them doing something creative with the esoteric arts, and book writing is a big one. They love to write things down. Okay, the writers, all of them, because they're seers and revelators. That's why you have the Bible. Okay, so in the next lifetime, you'll hear stuff about them that will remind you and remind them of this lifetime. Like in the Bible, you have the book of Ezra. Okay, so you'll see things in the Bible that reminds you of what you are. Okay, and it's usually the lead. It's usually one or the other or both. Okay, so in the next lifetime, you'll have the book of Emily or the book of Rose, or the doctrine and covenant of and the pearl of great price, you know, stuff like that. You will see things that reminds you and identifies with yourself. Okay, and the same thing for the masculine. But these are things that you're going to have to research. These are things that they're going to have to look into to find themselves. Their movies, their clips, they're all sorts of things that helps lead them back to self, that leads all of us back to self, because that's what life is. It's a journey to self, right? For all of us, not just the masculines and the feminine energies. However, even though there are 4 sets of divine masculines and 4 sets of divine feminines on the planet, there's only one original divine masculine and one original divine feminine. And that's the oldest masculine energy, the oldest feminine energy, and that's from where all life began, all human life began. Okay, so that's another part of your homework. One of the ways you can find out who the divine masculine is and who the divine feminine is to meditate. It's to go within, you know. One of the methods that I use to meditate is to start counting, take deep breaths, like 3 deep breaths, inhale and exhale, and then I'll slow down my breath, okay? Once I slow down my breath, I usually sit in a circle with candles around me. If I need specific answers like faces and stuff like that, if I'm diving deep and I want to know who did it, who said what, where should I go, you know, who is my person? Who is this? Who is that? So you can put a circle around you, or you can set a triangle or any type of shape around you. I suggest you don't use square. Okay? And you can take 3 deep inhales and exhales, big ones, and 3 small ones. And when you're done with the 3 small ones, listen to your breathing and start counting down backwards from 100. By the time, with the intent of knowing what you want to see. Okay? By the time you get to around 98, 89, it's really quick. Okay, you're gonna start to see stuff. You're gonna see like little colors, and then you're gonna start to transcend into different realms. You're gonna end up in this open land. Okay, this open land is it's the blue land. I didn't know why we access the blue. We have to go through the blue realm to get to the blue realm to get to the other realms. So you're gonna go to this place that's really blue. It's between deep blue and medium blue. Okay, it's have a purplish undertone to it. Okay, you're gonna go there. Once you go there, you start counting down. By the time you get in the 80s, the face of whoever you seek is gonna be presented in front of you. Okay, you want to know who your person is. That's what you do. Okay. People change because there are many people in your contracts, so don't stick to anything. Nothing is set in stone. If you see Bob Smith's face, and Bob Smith, because we all have agency, which is the right to choose whether we want to go on this journey or not, okay? There's consequence, there's reward, pick one, okay? So if you see Bob Smith on Monday, don't go set it in stone and reject Peter, because if you reject Peter, then, not a code or subliminal, because if you reject Peter, then you might not realize that Peter is part of your contract. And because Bob Smith didn't take the offer, it's next in line, and the cycles change. And now the pin, the Wheel of Fortune pin, has dropped on Peter. So now it's Peter's, because we're contracted to many different souls. We're not just bind and bound to any one soul. And that's the misconception, is where people think that we must be with this person, or we must be with that. No, we don't must be with anything. We must be with the person that answers the call. That's who we must be with, okay? The one that says, yes, Father, I'm here. Okay, that's who you must be with. You don't must be with your divine masculine, you don't must be your divine feminine. If people say, oh, you're not supposed to be with your divine masculine or your divine feminine, it's for you to learn lessons. No, those are entities, and those are set on your path as obstacles to deter you from yourself, okay? Always ask yourself, why is it not okay for me to be with myself? If it's not okay to be with yourself, and they're saying that yourself is so toxic that you're just to learn lessons from the toxic side of you, that's you not accepting all of you, okay? So there are entities these are some of the research, these are some of the homework that you have to find out. For example, if I say my masculine farts a lot And I hate that. And then the collective come and said, Emily, don't be with your masculine because he's a farter. And I'm like, yeah, I think he's a farter too. I shouldn't be with him. Ew. What I actually said was, I'm not good enough. I'm a smelly, rotten farter, and I shouldn't be with me. Ew. That's really what I said. What I said was, I agree with all of you. Beat me up. Go ahead. You know, call me a farter. I stink. For real, you're right. I stink. No. The masculine, the feminine has to realize that if there's any assassination upon the masculine, is an assassination upon the feminine. Any assassination upon the feminine is an assassination upon the masculine. Why? Because they are self. They are one. And the number one rule to spirituality is acceptance. Acceptance of self. Acceptance of all that is. So you can't reject your masculine part without rejecting parts of yourself, and vice versa. These are some of the lessons that the masculine and feminine energy has to learn to stop listening to entities. Whether it's your mom, your sister, your brother, another tarot reader. No, their job is not to tell you how to be you. Nobody can tell you how to be you. Nobody can tell you how to love you. Okay? That's your job. They're trying to answer your questions on your worksheet. And that's not how it works. It's like taking fingerprint for somebody else. So somebody else's fingerprint and say, hey, this is Bobson's fingerprint. You passed the background test. No, you didn't. It's not your fingerprint. You know, it's not your blueprint. So as soon as the masculine and feminine energy figures this out, or the masculines, because they're the ones that are mainly distracted with material resources and power, they always have power. Okay? World domination power, physical power, material power. They always rule that way in every lifetime first before the feminine does. Okay? The feminine rules alongside the masculine. However, the feminine is late. She's a late bloomer. She comes in last all the time. Okay? I don't know why, but in every lifetime, it's always the masculines that take the lead. And those are just truth that you can ask other shamans. But they operate as one. They're opposites. And when the feminine rebels or the masculine rebels and said, I'm not like you. I'm nothing like you. That's denial. When you deny self, when you're ashamed of self, you put yourself in a stagnant energy. Now neither energies are moving because you just shamed yourself. Okay? And these are some of the things that cause depression, anxiety, you know, withdrawal, drug addiction, stuff like that. It's when we don't accept things for what they are. It's when we don't accept self. When we're too critical of ourselves, we condemn ourselves, we do something and oh my God, we're the absolute worst. You know, and so we start to beat up ourselves. And one of the ways that we beat up ourselves is to get in these low vibrational energies, right? So I'm going to cut this video short. The moral of this story that I really want to get to, I don't know if I got the concept out right, is, got the thought out of my head right, but it is, there is no difference between the masculine and the feminine energy. And whenever we keep feeding into the idea that there's a difference, I'm opposite of you. I'm just like, that's just anger talking. That's just depression talking. That's anxiety. That's shame talking. Those are low vibrational entities and energies that are influencing our entities that are influencing our energies. Okay? And that's the worksheet. No tarot reader, no psychic, no shaman, no pastor, nobody, no friend, no lover can tell you how to be you, can tell you how to love you. You are already you. You were born you, okay? There's nothing changing about you. We're evolving as a being, but what that means is that we're remembering self, okay? We're growing in terms of matured. We remember what we are, our purpose, why we're here, where we want to go, you know, and how we want to live this journey, you know. So it's that's one of the things that the masculine and the feminine energy needs to remember, is that they are each other. So it's important that they, and I'm talking to myself, it's important that they speak positive, speak life into each other, okay? Because if the masculine sucks from the feminine, okay? Have you ever heard this song, Jars of Heart? Okay, the video is very deep, okay, very profound, but you have to be awakened to see it, to really get what the writer, the actress was, and the actor was trying to convey. they really suck from each other's energy, okay? And when one takes from the other, you're really knocking down the other, but you're knocking down self because you're still weakened, okay? Hence the lots of tattoos on our arms, okay? On our body, okay? And the ragged, the how her fabric is on her body, her hair, the color, the contrast, all the look at all the color variations and all the contrast. You know, that's part of the story too. It's not just the song and the movements, okay? The telephone booth, okay? It's the communication, okay? It's you and your internal compass and what you're saying to each other, what you're saying to yourself. You have to be there for each other, because if you don't put that air into their lung, they'll die, okay? And if they don't put that air into your lung, you'll die. You'll have a spiritual death, okay? And if you have a spiritual death, they have a spiritual death. If you get weakened to the point where you lose sight of your insights, you know, they lose sight of what's ahead of them, what's around them, you know. So it's important, it's imperative that we're like vampires, okay? We feed each other's energy, okay? We're each other's substance. My chair just got stuck. Yeah, so that's the journey. The twin flames actually brings out the best in each other, okay? They're each other's energy source. They're each other's lifeline. I'm not saying that they can't operate. They don't need to be in a romantic relationship. They just need to be in one accord mentally, spiritually, psychologically. They don't even need to be physically in the same place. What's imperative is that whether they're romantically involved or not, they must always stay in neutral. They cannot stay one above the other spiritually, one above the other mentally, psychologically. It will cause somebody to feel depressed, somebody to feel anxious, somebody to feel angry, somebody to feel sad, you know? You want to balance. Those energies are okay as long as they're balanced out, okay? So you want yin and yang. You want balance within the dynamic, okay? So there's no difference. There's no separation, only physical separation. That is it. So be very careful what you say to your masculine, and masculines, be very careful what you say to your feminine. And I'm talking to myself too. Okay, because we're all having a human experience, and sometimes we get angry and we say bad things, you know, and these are affirmations that we're dumping into our own souls and our own lives, you know. And I've seen things play out in my own life. That's a reflection of my masculine, and if my masculine's aware, he'll see things play out in his own life. That's a reflection of me. The same thing goes for high-level soulmates. They have to be very careful too, because they are pretty close to the twins. High-level soulmates, it's like a race. It's like who crossed the finish line first. You have to really slow down the tape and see who won, because they're that close, okay? The things they do affect each other just the same, but the twins even more so, because the difference between the soulmate and the twins is the soulmates are not one, they operate as one, okay? They're on the same wavelength, the same vibration. The twins are really one, okay? It's just separate vessels, but it's the same entity in each vessel, okay? So that's why there's no separation. There never will be. It will never happen. Okay? So it's very important that they feed positive things, feed life, speak life into each other, breathe life into each other, because it's a cost. It comes with a cost, and you don't want entities to have that. You don't want one of your twin to be weakened or feeling deprived mentally, spiritually, psychologically. That must be fed. That energy must be nurtured and loved. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share. It's a super long video. It's 28:43. So yeah, this is I was channeling, if you're unaware. So I don't know what I just said to you. All I know is that I just talked to you about twin flames and energies and how they work. Okay, I'm gonna go back and watch it. So take care.